to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important to endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, a certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome to the Endurance Athlete podcast. I'm your host, Justin White. I'm the head coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, and I'm here with Katie, who's a sports dietitian and owner of Fuel to Run. We decided to start this podcast to take all of our years of experience in sports diet and sports nutrition and coaching and endurance sports and help you along your endurance athlete journey by answering questions and covering topics ranging anywhere from nutrition, endurance sports like swim, bike, run, hiking, Spartan, anything that would require some kind of prolonged activity. And honestly, we've been doing this for many, many years, and we wanted to take all of our experience as both athletes and coaches and help you along your journey and to achieve things that you never thought were possible. And so today this is our first episode. So we're super excited to be for you to join us. Thank you for tuning in. We know that you have a large selection of podcasts available to you. So we are grateful and honored that you have decided to give us a listen.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to make sure too, as we're going, if you all have any questions or things you would like us to touch on or discuss, we do want to encourage participation in that way. So if you all want to reach out, at least at this point, we will be sharing our website information and contact information. So feel free to contact us if you have anything you want us to discuss. But for now, we're just going to be diving into different topics that we think are interesting. And we really want to make this fun and almost like it's just a conversation between Justin and I. Like we're having a conversation about these topics and diving in. And so hopefully it'll be kind of natural and interesting to listen to as if you're listening to a couple of close friends. So we also want that for our podcast as well. I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Any other thoughts, Justin, or do you think we got that intro, the purpose?
I think we got it all squared away.
Awesome.
Hopefully as the episodes progress, we'll get it a little bit more, but I know that I'm super nervous, so it's we'll just roll on.
Yeah, this is like new.
Just have like a nice casual conversation. It's a Saturday morning here in February. I live on the East Coast out in Virginia, and we just had a horrible ice storm, and it all went away, and now we have rain all weekend. Mm-hmm. I'm staring out of my office / training room to some pouring rain.
Right.
So this is always one of those times of years where it's like you're trying to dig your motivation and inspiration from the doldrums of under some rock and trying to find something that will get you motivated.
Yeah, maybe we can provide some motivation for people. Although I was just talking with Justin before we started that I'm in the same boat. I always struggle in February. I always know I'm going to struggle, but when it's the moment in it, it's just the mental fortitude to keep training can get tough, especially when I'm looking out my window and it's snowing. And my run this morning, it was pelted with ice crystal rain / snow while I was running. And so, yeah, it's definitely a challenging time of year. So hopefully we can provide a little bit of motivation. Just start, I always like listening to podcasts while I'm running. So even in that situation of just having something to listen to carry you through those brutal cold days or hard training sessions this time of year. But yeah, I'm excited to get started. A little nervous, but I think we're gonna be fine. But yeah, do you want? So I think I want to start, or at least I think we're gonna each talk a little bit about our journey. So kind of about, for me, it's more of my journey through as an athlete, but also I want to bring in my journey as like a professional too. So hopefully I can find a way to intertwine those things a little bit. Because I'm a registered dietitian or sports dietitian, and I'm an athlete. So I have these two, things that have happened in my life that have brought me here, and why I want to work and love working with endurance athletes. But I think, like, for me, my journey, like, and I'll start there and then we'll go to Justin's journey. So my journey started actually in middle school. So I don't think I would even maybe be here today if it wasn't for this girl in 5th grade asking me if I wanted to join the cross country team. And I thought I was signing up for cross country skiing. So I said, yeah, like, I'll join the team. Sure. Like, she was friendly and nice. And I thought, sure, I'll do cross country. And over the summer, before my 6th grade year, I got a letter from the coach with some training plans and some ideas of how to train over the summer. And I was like, what the heck? I don't want to, like, it's a winter sport. So why am I going to train over the summer? And my mother informed me, probably signed up for the cross country running team. And I, at the time, was like, nope, I'm not running. I'm not a runner. I don't know what that is. I don't want, but she convinced me to do it. And that was kind of my starting point, is going out that first day. I didn't actually do any training over the summer, but I went that first day to practice, and they did a mile, and I couldn't even complete the mile. So that was, but something about that first day and that challenge just kept me I kept going and kept training. And that's how it all started years and years ago. And it's been, close to somewhere around 30 years of this journey. So I ran in high school, I ran in college. So that's kind of another whole unique story that I might dive into a little bit more in detail at some point, but I won't dive. I'll kind of hit on a little bit, but I ran for about 3 or 4 years at the University of Colorado, and that at the time was one of the best schools in the nation. And I was actually a walk-on and struggled a little bit there. So I learned through that journey a few things. First of all, I learned that fueling is important. I had some struggles with my own fueling. And I also learned that training hard every day is probably not a smart thing, but for, in terms of injury. But so I ran at the University of Colorado, and then kind of burnt out a little bit, took a little bit of time off and got back into running. But in this whole process, I took a class, one class at the University of Colorado when I sort of changed gears and switched my majors. From biochemistry to kinesiology. I took a nutrition class because I had to get at least 12 credits to be on the team. So during that class, it was the first time I actually read a book, like a textbook, and fell in love with what I was reading. I wanted to read every single word. I thought it was so fascinating. I was like, I love this. So that was my first inkling, like, okay, this is kind of something I really enjoy. And I kind of had some light bulb moments, like, oh yeah, like, I actually probably should fuel my body a little better to run. Like, there were some things I wasn't doing well, and that book was sort of teaching me about the macronutrients and even a little bit about fueling for exercise. And I found that so fascinating. But I wouldn't dive into nutrition quite yet. I had to finish my undergraduate degree and then flail around for a few years trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Got back into running a little bit. I wasn't really sure, but I did apply for a master's degree program at the University of Colorado, Colorado State University, and ended up, after a few years, getting into that program. So that's where I ended up for my master's degree. And I actually did the triathlon team while I was there. So I switched gears a little bit. Mostly because I was wanting to do some sort of, cross training for running. And I was in Boulder at the time, kind of in between, because that's where the University of Colorado is. So I was there, and in between this time between that and going to my master's degree, I had friends who were like, come do master's swimming with us, come ride bikes with us. And I started getting into that. And so I started to do triathlon training essentially. And so I did the triathlon team at Colorado State, and then graduated there with my master's degree in nutrition and did an internship. That's all part of that program to become a registered dietitian. And then ever since then, so that was about 13, 14 years ago at this point, I like just kind of like got into nutrition and started working with athletes and all sorts of athletes, not just endurance athletes, but sports nutrition within the collegiate setting. But my real passion has always been endurance. And I've been running pretty much ever since, several marathons at this point, several triathlons, only one at this point, half Ironman distance triathlon. So we'll see. We'll see if I ever get back into that at this point. I've done some Spartan stuff. So I've kind of been all over the place with my endurance. I've done one, or not one, but I've done a couple ultras, planning to do more of those as well at some point. But that's just a little overview of my journey. I don't know. I might probably leaving some stuff out. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's I don't know. I think that's pretty much it. I'm sure at some point throughout the podcast, I will share more details and more stories. What are your thoughts, Justin? You've heard some of my background. I don't know if I feel like I've included most of it, at least a good overview of it, I think.
Yeah, you've definitely been an athlete a lot longer than I have. Um, I mean, I didn't really start until I was in my 30s.
Right.
Um, I mean, I spent the vast majority of my life just morbidly obese and unactive, and everything. So
Well,
I consider,
that's what's interesting though. Like
yeah. So
story, because
there's
it's like your journey is like totally different than mine, and what, not
yeah.
totally, but it's a different, very different. So yeah,
I consider there's like two phases of my life, and so it's like there was in 2010 I had a gastric bypass surgery, so I had Roman Y bypass, and so there was what I consider to be pre-surgery and post-surgery phases of my life, and they're absolutely completely different. So I mean, it got to the point where I was close to a pack a day smoker. Um, I was up to 365 pounds to where, I couldn't walk, a city block without having to pause and like stretch my back a little bit, take the pressure off of it. I had my first herniated disc when I was in my 20s, which is a lot earlier than, most. Usually people don't experience those until their 30s. But mine happened, when I was in my mid 20s. And so, I had to do something drastic. And, I had always tried the whole diets, and there were yo yo diets. And, I would stay motivated for a while, and then, I'd fall off the wagon. I'm definitely one of those type A personalities where I'm like, I'm all in. It's either all in or all out. So my issues were, I would try and have that perfect streak going. I would mess up one meal, and then all of a sudden that one meal would turn into two meals. Oh, well, I've already screwed up these two meals. I'm just gonna, the day is a waste. So I'm just gonna eat whatever I want for the rest of the day. And then once you kind of start with that, then you kind of lose where you're like, well, I'm eating like crap. Might as well, skip the gym. There's no point in going to the gym, and that's where it just kind of snowballs. And so those are the types of experiences that I had, before my surgery. And I went ahead and I had my surgery, and I lost weight quickly, so it was really really fast. I ran. I basically took a year as just trying to learn how to run, because I had always had this fascination with runners, and I never could do it because I would constantly get hurt because I was just really big and just out of shape. And my muscular system couldn't handle the demands of the activity, so I would just get hurt, and then that would sideline me even more, and then I'd lose motivation and then fall off the wagon. So I spent a year basically before I ran my first 5K, and was trying to learn how to fuel myself and how to just eat normal like every day, given my new restrictions that I had. And I ran my first 5K, and I actually ran it as a warm up to my ultimate goal, which was a 10K to start. And so now, as a coach, if somebody comes to me, and I see these posts, it's like, I want to run a 10K, but I've never ran anything. It always makes me cringe a little bit. It's like, well, there is the 5K version, but I have to quickly tell myself that I wasn't thinking about that when I
Mhm.
first started. So I ran my first 5K, and then the very next weekend, I ran the 10K, and I was absolutely hooked. I was so excited that I actually, finally become a runner. And I had a guy that I worked with in my office, and we went out to lunch one day, and he said, "Hey, there's this thing that they call a triathlon, and it's in my town." He lived, like an hour away from where our office was, so I was like, give it a look. He's like, I think it might be something that you're interested in. And I went back to the office, immediately jumped on the website to check it out. I was like, you know what, this does sound kind of interesting. I was like, I don't know how to swim though, but I mean, I could just like flail around in the water like we do as kids, but I didn't know like how to like swim proper. And so I chose the option to do a duathlon, which is like the run and then you bike, then you run again. And so I was like, I could do those two things, so let's give it a shot. And I did it, and I did that on a super hilly course on the heaviest mountain bike you could possibly find. And I was in it. Once I crossed the finish line, I was like, "That's it. I found my new passion." And so
So
it's just been it's just been it's been rolling since then.
right.
Um, and I remember I was in a car ride one time, and I don't know, I was like looking through a book or a magazine or something like that, and it just popped in my head, and I was 35 at the time, and you know, and I said, you know what, I want to do an Ironman by the time I'm
Mhm.
40. So I gave myself 5 years. Um, and so I progressively just worked my way up, learned how to swim, which was an insane
Hard to do
experience.
when you're an adult. It's really
It's so humbling. You're like in your 30s and you swim from one end of the pool, but you can't make it back. So so you have to sit at the other end of the pool and kind of catch your breath. It's like, okay, all right, let's go. You swim to the other end. But once I kind of like dove in and said, okay, I'm going to do like a real triathlon, none of this duathlon stuff. I want to do all three sports. I
right,
swam like every day trying to learn how to do it.
right,
And
yeah.
it was just it actually took me 2 years of, like, doing triathlons before I would actually swim freestyle in the water. I had, like, this, like, jacked up kinda, like, side stroke thing that I would just kinda, like, glide through the water, and I was like, "It ain't pretty, but it gets me from the beginning to the end so I can get out and just bike and run."
Do the rest,
So,
yeah.
uh,
I was like, if
so
I can just survive the swim, then I've
I
got
know
this
if all I need to do is I just need to get out of the water. That's all that matters. Um, and
Yeah.
so, I did. It took me 5 years, and I worked my way from the Olympics and the half Ironmans, and then did my first full Ironman. It was 2017. Yeah, 2017. I did Ironman Chattanooga, and then the following year in 2018, I did Ironman Louisville.
Mhm.
And so, at the time that we're doing this recording, I've got about 9 half Ironman and 2 fulls. Um, kind of experienced. I had coaches, and I've talked to others, like other like elite coaches, to try and get advice as I was like on my journey. And a lot of them never really talked about the benefits of strength training. And as a
Mhm.
gastric bypass patient,
Mhm.
you lose weight so quickly that you've lost a lot of muscle. And so I was trying to like stack on all this cardio off of a on a week on a weak frame, and I was just constantly getting hurt.
Mhm.
And so, I've recently over the past couple of years, I've just been cleaning up some of the damage that was done from endurance sports. A couple surgeries to fix things, and so now I'm in the process of rebuilding on my way back to long course racing. Um, but it was during COVID, right after I finished Ironman Louisville, and then kind of COVID was kind of like, in its infancy at that stage. I decided, you know what, I've been doing this a long time. I got a lot of experience, like real world
Mhm.
experiences. So if I can do this, anybody can do it as long as they're properly motivated and they're willing to put in the work. And
Mhm.
so I decided, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to start coaching. I want to try and help others
Mhm.
to do the stuff that I've done that I never dreamed was possible for somebody like me. And so I started Tabula Rasa Racing, and it was basically just the creation of a Facebook page. Is how I started it, and then I rolled out like a proper website and everything else. You know,
Nice. Yeah.
you're a business when you finally get your business cards printed, and you have
Yeah.
QR codes on it now. So
It
it's
took
like, all
me
right, that's it.
since like
I'm in it.
2012, because that's when I started my business. It was like 2012, which is crazy. That's when I did all the things to become like an LLC through the state of Colorado and like put up a website and I don't know, had
Yeah,
business cards. So, technically but I've kind of been, on and off like with my own personal business, depending on kind of my other opportunities I've had. But yeah, it's hard. Yeah, I think that you're technically in business when you create the business name and you
I know.
go at it. But yeah,
So,
I think
so yeah, I coach. A lot of my athletes are kind of they're introductory athletes, so they're
Mhm,
kind of new to the sport. I feel like
mhm.
that's kind of a good niche that I've kind
Right.
of carved
Yeah.
out a little bit. I did decide to go ahead and get some certifications to give people like a sense of peace about it.
Mhm.
Because if you kind of walk in and just like, hey, I've been doing this for a decade, a lot of people just want to see the paper.
Right. Yeah.
And so I went ahead and I got, a certified run coach through the Road Runners Association.
Mhm,
And then I got my triathlon coach certification through USA Triathlon.
mhm.
And so, I do have the certifications, but a lot of it is just from my real world experience,
Yeah, absolutely.
doing things wrong so many times,
We
and
can almost have like a whole podcast.
learning from that
Like,
process.
what
Yeah,
did I do wrong? Like, what were my mistakes? Don't do what I did. Let's learn from my mistakes because I have a few of my own, especially in college. Like, I'm sure as we're talking, about fueling and things like that, I will dive into that a little more about some of the things that I've maybe encountered or, experiences I've had too. But yeah, it's kind of like at this point with my nutrition coaching, I see all sorts of athletes. It was like a little different because I will, anyone from the beginner to like the more elite athlete, I will, I'm not discriminatory on that. Obviously, the needs are different for those different levels of athletes and different sports. Whether they're doing a triathlon versus a 5K, but and I see a lot of high school athletes actually that are in cross country or track or sometimes even other sports. But and I that's like when I love because I'm like, oh man, if they can learn now, they won't make all the mistakes I
yeah,
made when I was in high school and college. Like, I'm like, I just want to provide knowledge because I don't want like anyone to have to like experience what I experienced in those, and the mistakes I made during that time frame. I think looking back at it, it's never good to kind of look back and wish something different. But if I could tell my high school self what I know now, I would be so much. My trajectory might have been a little bit different, but at the same time, I don't know if I would be able to have the knowledge and experience and ability to help others because I wouldn't have had those experiences. So it's kind of like, in some ways it makes my ability to help others a little bit more robust, a little bit more informed because I have lived, some pretty, some struggles throughout my time as an
yeah.
athlete. So, and I think too, like your whole experience is so interesting, Justin, because you almost had this like I mean, I can remember being an athlete, from a very young age. Like it's always been a part of my identity. But you've almost had like this prior identity, like this sort of prior you, and then you have this surgery that changes you, and then you sort of become like you're an athlete. But it's almost like there's always this fear, or like you've told me this before, like kind of like of
Yeah.
going back to that, which I think is something a lot of people who've had the bariatric surgery or some kind of surgery like that, any kind of surgery that, or any sort of change in their weight or something that, they have that sort of prior identity, and then they sort of become more of an athlete or an endurance athlete. There's always that sort of, fear that they're somehow going to be back to that. So I think that's where you have a very unique perspective.
Yeah, part of me really likes that part of my story,
Mm-hmm.
where there always is kind of like a, and I know that we've talked about this before. Um, I do have pictures of, who, what I looked like before my surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes they'll pop up, and
Mm-hmm.
so you know, part of me still kind of like looks in the mirror and sees that guy, and you can just kind of see it in his face and see it in his eyes, the almost the sadness, from just, being inactive and just in pain constantly,
Mm-hmm.
just from the weight and just inactivity. And so, I think to a certain extent that previous identity does fuel who I am today. But it can be uh, too much fire, too much fuel on the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Where it does kind of like, you're so afraid to turn into to go back to that person that you just keep pushing, 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 until the point where you just break,
Mm-hmm.
and your body just can't take it, all because you're afraid to slow
Mm.
down, and you're
Well,
you're afraid to, it's like, oh, I'm afraid to eat this, this particular,
mhm.
food, because this was a huge trigger of mine before. And for me, it's, pizza. That is my kryptonite, is pizza, and I still
Yeah.
love it, to this day. But you know, I think, trying to stay away from those bad habits puts a lot of pressure on ourselves,
Mhm.
and as athletes, and to a certain extent, it does it as a coach too, because it's made me insecure. Because I mean, I know I'm a good coach, and I know that I know what I'm doing, and I've lived the experience, and I've helped others in their journey as well. But I do kind of look as, part of me is like, the little negative voice in your head. It's just like,
Mhm.
hey, I'm at a race, and I've got, my coaching shirt on, and I'm there supporting an athlete that I'm coaching, which is some of the stuff that I like to do. I like to go to their races,
Mhm.
and it makes me insecure. It's like, who wants a fat coach? So it's like, I don't look like, the typical endurance athlete. Um,
Mm.
and so I think to a certain extent it fuels a little bit of insecurity. And so, as having that previous identity can be a good thing. Yet again, there are some little caveats and pitfalls, and it's all on me. It's my responsibility to get past those insecurities. It's on me to put on my coaching hat, because I am self-coached. I do my own training plan,
Mhm.
and so it's on me to kind of set aside my pride and my sense of invincibility, because I'm 47 years old now. I mean, not like in my, 30s and just kind of getting started. You know, I can't handle the kind of volume or the intensity that I used to be able to do, and then bounce right back the next day. So, part of me, it's on me to manage that and to do that. One
Mhm.
of the interesting things about you and I is that you have the educational background, from with the dietetics, where that is your educational background.
Mhm.
You went through an undergraduate degree and master's degree. Um, my educational background is, I got a undergraduate and master's degree in economics.
Mhm.
So
So
it's as far away from athletics as you can possibly
I
get.
feel like that's like a
Um,
lot of people that get into like so like I don't know.
so
Not everyone has that like background in, you know, sports or like physical education or exercise science. Like, I don't know. So, because I think, you can have that's something I learned even in my education. Like, I had all of this knowledge going out of school, and I was like, oh, I'm like so smart. Look at like how smart I am. I've got this master's degree or whatever. And then I get out in the real world and I'm like, oh my gosh, like everything it's like, wow, I'm actually not so smart as I thought. Not because I hadn't been well educated, but more just like it's like the real world experience of, I mean, I had all that experience with athletics before. Like I said, I'd made some mistakes and kind of learned from them, but it was like just that like learning curve between, my master's. I graduated with my master's in 2011, so I've been at this for a while. And yeah, like that's where like the bulk of my learning and like everything that I now am and know, and still don't know everything, and like about sport, like there's still so much sometimes to learn too, just about exercise and sports. And that's why I feel like I'm constantly learning, but like, and I love it. But it's like you just, yeah, you get that degree. But what I'm trying to say is like it's the like doing it yourself, and then also like working with other people and coaching other people, because I've been in places where I'm like, oh, you need to do this, this, and this, like with their fueling, and this person struggles with something, and it's like, wow, this is different than I was taught, like you get those edge cases and you learn how to work with a variety of different people. And I think that's what's interesting about my background and kind of how we got connected was I was doing a lot with sports, but in my time I was also doing some work in a clinic, in a diabetes clinic. So had my private practice, and then I was doing, this is where I have a really unique background too, in that I have a very, very strong medical nutrition therapy piece as well. So like I have a great understanding if someone does have some sort of surgery or something like that going on, diabetes, like those types of athletes I can do really well with because I have that strong background. But anyways, spend about 3 years or 4 years during that time working with the bariatric surgeons here in Northern Colorado and doing those post-bariatric diet consults. And in my mind, I'm like, this is so far from like anything that's ever going to be sports related. And honestly, I didn't really love it because it was very like, you have to eat very low calorie, high protein. Like I just didn't love it, but I'm like, this is kind of part of my job. I don't know how this is ever going to relate. And then I had this one person contact me like during this time frame for sports nutrition that was like, I had a bariatric surgery like 5 years ago or something like that. And I'm trying to do this ultra. And I was like, oh, well, I like have this background, like this really interesting knowledge of like bariatric surgeries that most, if not all, or at least many sports dietitians don't have. Like, so if somebody's had these surgeries, they don't know where to go, because this traditional sports dietitian has no idea for the most part, like what that surgery entails and what the recommendations are and the struggles that these people have post surgery. Well, I knew what they were going through because I worked with them. So this woman, I was like, yeah, I can definitely help you, because now I'm combining these two things that I thought were not even related in the least bit. And then it opened up my eyes to this whole world of people who've gone through something similar to what you've gone through, Justin, where they've had maybe they were athletes at some point, or they gained weight, or for whatever reason they ended up having this surgery, and then they were motivated because they lost the weight to start training for something. And there's this whole world of people out there like that. There's lots of people, it's not like,
yeah,
obviously there's a lot of people who don't have the surgeries that are athletes, but there is a lot. And I think that's also something kind of unique about my experience. And that's kind of how we got connected. Somehow you came across something that, somebody maybe recommended me or something. And you were reaching out to me for that piece. And we kind of found out we actually communicate
yeah,
well. So
yeah. I can tell you the story about
Exceptions.
kind of how we
Yeah,
connected.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Um, uh, when I started kind of really ramping up my coaching business, and I had joined a bunch of these Facebook groups, like running base and like triathlon base Facebook groups. So I was like, well, if I can at least join some of these groups and kind of see what kind of conversations and discussions are going on, maybe I can offer, a tidbit of advice here and there and kind of, say, this is who I am. I'm not just like some crazy person who's giving you advice. I am certified and this is, I've been doing this for decades. So there is some validity coming from, I'm giving you advice based on experience and training. And I crossed paths with a few what they call the bariathletes. These bariatric patients who feel like they've gotten a new lease on life, which is exactly how I felt.
Mhm,
It's kind of like this new life that you've started, and they don't want to waste it, so they get into endurance sports. And they're a very unique niche that's in the endurance, what I would call the endurance population. And so as I started talking to them a little bit more, they actually encouraged me. They're like, what would be a great thing to have is a Facebook group dedicated to bariatric endurance athletes. And so I did a quick Facebook search and I found a couple that just really weren't all that active.
mhm,
There was one that was like super active and a fairly large group. And so I went ahead and I just created my own bariatric Facebook group
mhm,
and invited all these people that I came across to join the group, and then they joined. And one of the guys that was in the group that I talked to, and we had a consultation. He was looking for a coach, and he lived down in Florida. And he was like, hey, I'm interested in doing an Ironman, and I'm looking for a coach. And so I had a consultation with him. He ended up going with somebody else. And so what he did was he said, hey, you know, I reached out and had a consultation with this dietitian who has experience in bariatrics. Her name is Katie Kasane, and she's with Fuel to Run. And so I was like, oh well, that's interesting. I'll have to, and I wrote your name down in like my files just in case, because I was like, you know, if I ever come across an athlete who may need you know dietitian information, dietitian help, then that's fine. Not knowing, or not really accepting the fact that it was me who really needed the dietitian help, because once COVID hit, and I was still training the whole
mhm.
time, but my weight was just going up and up and up and up, and I was just like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm gaining weight, but I'm working out all the time. What do I need to do? Work out more and work
Mhm,
out at a higher intensity. And so that did nothing but fuel the weight gain even more and more and more. And then I had a couple surgeries to repair some stuff, and that resulted in a sharp decline in my
mhm.
training to all low end zone two aerobic work. We're talking like hiking, because it's kind of hard if you've had a torn rotator cuff and your bicep tendon relocated to
Right,
really kind of like ride and run and
right.
swim. So it's like, what can I do? Well, I can walk. So my arm in a sling, that's what I did. I walked. Um, and so it just wasn't enough to offset the calories that I was kind of taking in, and the way that I was eating. And so I was just getting super frustrated, and I tried to do it myself. So I went back to periods of my life where I did lose weight,
Mhm,
and I was like, I'm just going to go back and do what I did then, and I would implement that, and it didn't help. So it kind of taught me, it's like, you know there are different seasons in our life where certain methods may work, and as we get older, those methods may not be as successful.
mhm,
And so I went back in my files and I was like, look, I really need, and I first reached out to a nutritionist. Um, she was she was helpful, and she did kind of like give me some information, but I didn't see like any results.
mhm,
And she didn't have the experience of dealing with somebody like me, who has a very different digestive system. It has a very different absorption system, caloric absorption and nutrient absorption system, like I have. And so, she would have been very successful with just what I call a normal person.
Right.
And I said, I really need somebody who's got, a specialty. I need somebody who understands endurance athletes and the demands that we have because, you know, we are very different from the normal person.
Mhm.
But then again, I needed somebody who understood the way that my body works and the way that my body absorbs things, the way that it doesn't absorb things, and how to fuel my training at the intensity that I wanted effectively. And to find somebody like that is excruciatingly hard.
Mhm.
You really find people that understand endurance athletes,
Right, that's what I said.
or you
Yeah,
find somebody who understands bariatric patients. You
right.
never find the marriage of the two. And dealing with somebody who only understands the bariatric side, you get good advice, but not proper advice to fuel
Mhm.
training. They'll
Mhm.
they'll tell you how to lose weight, but they're not going to tell you how to fuel your training
Mhm.
and lose weight or change body composition, which is something that we had done a previous
Mhm.
recording about, kind of this moving away from this mindset of, hey, I want to lose weight to, hey, I want to change my body composition. And I think it's such a powerful way of looking at it.
Mhm.
And so luckily I had written your name down in my files, and I said, this is the person that I think that I need to
Yep.
at least talk to. And so I reached out to you, and we've been working together now for what, over a year almost. We're probably pretty
Yeah.
close to it.
Close to a year at least, like,
Yeah.
maybe,
And
like, it was,
and
like, around
so
this time last year, so
yeah, I can honestly say that over the past decade that I've been doing this, I feel great now. I do know that I'm fueling my workouts properly. I do have a better handle on the nutrition side of it. And I'm thankful that I do have a job that allows me to be able to have that luxury of having you send me my menu and kind of take that pressure off
Mhm.
of me. Because it's almost like you're just setting a kid alone in a candy store and you're just like, here, figure out what you're going to eat. It's just like,
Yeah,
well,
that's what
I,
is,
I
like,
don't have good experience about doing this in the past, so
right, and
please
some
just
people need
take
that,
the
like,
reins.
I think that's the thing is, like, sometimes something I've learned working with people is, like, sometimes some people I can be like, "This is what you need to do," and I'll send, like, a little bit of a template of, like, "This is what we talked about, here's what you need to do," and it's like they can kinda take it and run with it a little bit. Maybe they need to just come for follow-ups to check in. And then there are, I think for some people it is helpful to have not so much someone like because I think with I really try in our discussions to talk about the why behind I never want to be like, you have to do this and this is your meal plan and just do it. Like don't ask questions. Like that's not how I operate. Like I want someone like, and I think you've been good about asking me things like why, like, or what do you think about this? Or what do so, and that's, I think what it takes to be a good coach too, is like, being able to have those discussions and be able to answer like the whys behind why you're recommending something. And in some certain cases, like it has made me, sometimes it does make me think like, oh yeah, maybe like I need to revisit that or like look at that research and that again, because that is something that I've learned, but maybe it's changed. And so it does push me to be better too. But, some people do need more like something like, it's nice if you're really busy too, to have some plan, something that's kind of, okay, this is what I'm following. This is what I'm doing for the week. And you don't have to think about it as hard, like a coaching training plan, So some people, you can kind of give them a generic plan and they can just kind of take it and run with it. And some people need more like individualized. And that's sort of how it is works as a sports dietitian too, almost like I kind of think of myself as like a coach and sometimes a detective because
Yeah.
a diet detective because like some people come and I'm like, they're telling me what's going on and I'm like, okay, like I have to like, sometimes I need all the workouts. I need your diet history. Like, what are you eating? What are your labs? Like, I'm looking at all this information and data, and it's almost like I'm trying to piece out what the heck is going on with someone. So it's like, there's, that's the fun part about it is sometimes I feel like I'm literally like why are you not losing weight? Like we have to almost go in and
Yeah.
be like detectives, like I do. Like I have to look through, like what the heck is going on, you know? So that's you know, if someone's like wondering what it's like to work with me, it's like I don't have a cookie cutter sort of way I work with people. It's all sort of individual, and I think that's kind of how it's been. You know, it's like, okay, try and figure out. We had a way of doing it in the beginning, and then we finally found a way. I think you could.
Yeah.
I think Justin, that you is like easy. You know, we found sort of a solution, but it doesn't always come easily at first. Sometimes it's like I've got to sort of work with someone for a bit to help be able to help them, and it's like
Yeah,
almost like a
there's a lot of there's a lot of trial and error,
mm-hmm.
and the same thing from my perspective
Coaching.
as
Yeah,
as
like
a coach.
yeah.
Is one of the things working with you has kind of taught me is that the nutrition side is almost just like putting together the training plan. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's nuances from day to day and person to person.
Mm-hmm.
So giving somebody
Even within a year cycle,
giving
right?
giving somebody else my diet isn't necessarily going to help them. Just like giving me somebody else's diet
Yeah,
isn't going
that's
to
like
help me.
that's why I hesitate to share, like, this is like, you know how people put on their Instagram, like, "This is my daily what I eat in a day,"
Yeah,
and, like,
no,
I
it's so horrible.
don't like that because I'm like, "No, like, that's what you eat in a day, but this person over here probably doesn't need to eat what you're eating in a day, so why even
Right.
share," you know, like, I don't know, like, I might share, like, a recipe or a meal, but I'm never ever going to be like, "This is what I eat in a day," as a dietitian, because what I eat in a day isn't what, you know, somebody else might need to be eating in a day, because I'm training differently, my needs are different, my goals are
Yeah.
different. It's like that, yeah. So that's I think the
Yeah.
reason somebody should work with a sports dietitian is because not only that, but it's there's just so much like bad or conflicting or just maybe good information, but it doesn't apply, you know, to somebody, and they're like listening to other podcasts, or they're like looking at things on like social media, or they're googling things, and then all of a sudden it's just like so overwhelming, you know, like what do I, and it is like kind of becomes a paralysis. I think that can be true for coaching too. Like, what should I do? How should I train? And there's like all these different philosophies of like how to go about training, or like different training programs. And all of a sudden you're just like, it's almost like you become a little bit paralyzed in what you should do. And I have a lot of people who eventually contact me who are like, I can't, I don't, I give up. I don't know. Like I've tried different things. I've gone and, you know, looked online, and it's everything's so confusing. I just need someone to help me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing when it comes to like creating my athlete training plans. Nobody has the same plan.
Right.
They're all extremely unique. I mean, I do coach, triathletes, but I do coach single sport athletes as well. I've worked with just swimmers. I've worked with just runners. I haven't had the opportunity to work with somebody who is just interested in cycling.
Mhm.
But I think that when I see other coaches posting hey, this is your 15-week plan to run your first marathon, and I think that there's a time and place for something like that. But thinking that, hey, this person used that plan and it worked for them, it's going to work for me, is
Mhm.
the wrong approach.
Mhm.
And so it's like, you have uniqueness in you that makes you different from them, to where the plan that they followed may not work for you. It
Mhm.
may have too much intensity, it may have too little intensity. You have an injury history just that may be completely different from
Mhm.
theirs. You have different demands on your life. You could have somebody who's single or married with no kids, a 9 to 5 job, Monday through Friday, and weekend warrior. They can go out and they have all the free time available. Then you have the single mom who's got a couple kids,
Yeah.
working a job that's got flexible out, that has unregular hours. Why
Mhm.
would I give them a plan, the same plan that I give
Mhm.
the guy who's maybe married with no kids and a stable job? I mean,
Right.
all I'm doing is I'm setting up that single mom for failure.
Right. Yeah.
And you're giving them something that they can't possibly succeed with, and they can't possibly execute. And I think the same goes with nutrition.
Yeah.
You, you,
You do,
you
yeah.
can't give somebody the same plan and tell them,
Mhm.
hey, all you need to do is eat this, eat it at this time and in
Right,
this amount, and that's what you need. And this
right.
whole like calories in, calories out mindset. I mean, we've talked about this before. It's a gross simplification
Mhm,
of what it takes to either lose weight or change body
mhm.
composition. And the same goes with endurance training.
Right.
Following a plan that somebody else has followed that may not be suitable for your lifestyle, your past, and the issues that you have to deal with. Um,
Mhm.
so hopefully that we'll be able to use this platform
Yeah, to kind
for the
of
Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and we'll be able to talk about some of these nuances of training and how
right.
to weave them in and out of your specific needs. Not
Absolutely.
everything that we say is going to be pertinent to every single person,
Mhm,
but if there's a possibility that one statement that Katie or I could make that clicks for you, that works for you, or shows you something that you've been doing that isn't working for you, then the time that we spend doing this is completely worth it.
mhm.
And it is the
Yeah,
purpose why we really want to do this. And
right.
if it takes just one person having their aha moment is completely worth
It's
it.
worth it, yeah, for sure. And I think, like, as we kind of alluded to, like, these are all I mean, we're gonna dive into, like, the nutrition and the training and just different topics, like, it's not just going to be nutrition, and it's not going to just be, like, training, which I think is a lot of what the podcast not to say that current podcasts are like, there's several I listen to that I really, really like to listen to, but
Yeah.
they might have some of those aspects, but because we're both have these unique perspectives and like experiences, I think we really bring an interesting discussion, to it. And so hopefully we will be able to dive into some of these topics in a way that maybe, if other podcasters or other people in the space haven't been able to, because there is so much nuance too. That's the problem. It can be like, oh well, in this scenario it might work, but this like that's what we're hoping to bring. We don't want to make it overcomplicated, but at the same time, yeah, if it helps somebody out there to figure out how to fuel better, or maybe they have a better race outcome or an aha moment because of it, like that's all worth it to me. Speaking of which, because I know we're going to wind down soon, but we have so this is our first episode, but our first topic related episode, or episode number 2, will be forming a race day nutrition strategy. So we're just going to be talking a little bit more, because I think that also is, from what I can gather based off what I've seen recently, sort of a hot topic right now is how to how to fuel your race, like how to kind of fuel in that training, but also that race specific fueling. So that's what our first topic is. Do you have any other things you want to mention on that? uh,
No, I mean it definitely is a hot button
it's
topic.
a hot button topic right
It
now.
seems like
Like,
almost every single podcast that I've been
yeah,
listening to recently, or any kind of article that pops up, has some kind of like nutrition component now, where people are
right.
carb
Yeah.
loading during training, and it's
Yeah, we'll talk about
I
that. I think that's what we're
I,
going
I
to capture a little
yeah, I
bit
think
next
I
week is
think it's timely, and I
you
think
need
that
to
you and
take
I provide.
190 grams an hour. Is that really
Yeah,
is that no? Yeah, no. But
no.
that's what we're going to talk about a little bit, like what's happening in that space and how to kind of how to interpret some of that, and what might be best for an individual kind of wanting to try to figure that out for themselves, and maybe even how to figure like how to go about that,
Yeah.
in more of a how to sort of uh, uh, discussion, I think. So yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I don't think that we'll be able to give them the entire puzzle, but
No,
if we can give them a couple pieces to
yeah,
their own individual puzzle,
exactly.
then
Yeah, I don't think
that's what I kind of want
we're not
them
gonna
to
end
walk
it
away
like with this perfect strategy, but what we
with.
hope
Yeah,
is
no.
maybe it gives you some ideas of where to start, or how to kind of go about it, and then it is kind of like training. You have to it's trial and error
Yeah.
process. So yeah, absolutely. Well, I know I think hopefully this was a good first podcast and showing our stories. I think we were able to at least give the listeners an idea of where, our background, a little bit of our own experiences, how we met, how we connected, which is also important, and what we're going to discuss in the future. And I'm really looking forward to it. I love
me
this
too.
stuff. So I'm just to be able to like talk about it and put it out there so someone else maybe get something from it too is great. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Katie. I've
Thanks,
enjoyed our
Justin.
conversation here
Yeah.
on a rainy Saturday.
It kind of brightened my day, honestly. I feel a little bit more
Absolutely.
peppy now because of it. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to do it, and I'll chat with you again soon.
All right. We'll talk again later.
All right, bye, Justin.
All right. See you, Katie. Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Katie an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.